My job at a Skinwalker Motel comes with terrifying rules. The night clerk. The vacancy sign flickered against the dark Ohio sky, buzzing like an old street lamp ready to give out. The motel was one of those run-down places that looked like it had been built in the 60s and forgotten. Peeling paint, a cracked neon sign, and a front office that smelled like dust and desperation. It was the kind of place where no one asked questions, and for the right price, you could disappear. That was exactly why I took the job. I was broke, fresh out of a string of failed jobs, and on the run from something I didn't fully understand. The Craigslist ad had been vague. Night clerk needed. No experience required. High pay. The address was local, and the pay was suspiciously good. It didn't matter. I needed money. The old man who hired me barely looked up from his newspaper when I walked in. His name was Earl. Wrinkled skin, tired eyes, and a cigarette permanently hanging from his lips. He slid a thick employee handbook across the desk. You read this. You follow it. No exceptions. The handbook was unusually thick for a motel job. When I flipped it open, the first few pages were normal. Check-in procedures, emergency numbers. But after that, the rules got weird. Number 1, guests will check in, but not all will check out. Do not question this. Number 2, if a guest books room 6, do not acknowledge them. Do not make eye contact. Number 3, between 2:33 a.m. and 3:17 a.m., do not leave the front desk, no matter what you hear. Number 4, if you see a guest outside after 3 a.m., they're not a guest. Lock the doors. Number 5, under no circumstances should you ever speak to the woman in the blue dress. The list went on, each rule stranger than the last. I laughed uneasily and looked up. This a joke? I asked. Earl didn't laugh. You'll find out. That night, I learned the rules were real. The first shift, I had barely settled behind the desk when the door creaked open. A man walked in, stiff and unnatural, his eyes too wide. His voice was clipped and monotone. I need a room, he said. Room 6. Every nerve in my body screamed at me. Rule 2. Do not acknowledge him. I swallowed hard, pretending to type something into the ancient motel computer. My hand shook. I could feel his gaze burning into me. I need room 6, he repeated. I didn't speak. The man stood there for a long time. Too long. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out the front door. I exhaled, heart pounding. It had to be a prank, right? Some creepy initiation. The night dragged on, uneventful until 2:33 a.m. That's when the noises started. Scraping against the walls. A faint tapping at the windows. Something heavy dragging across the pavement outside. I gripped the edge of the counter, forcing myself to follow Rule 3. Do not leave the front desk. The scratching grew louder. Closer. It wasn't an animal. It was something else. Something big. Then came the whispering. At first, I thought it was the wind, but the words were too clear. A chorus of voices, overlapping, whispering my name. My blood turned to ice. I shut my eyes, cover my ears. It's not real. It's not real. Then silence. The clock read 3:18 a.m. It was over. The woman in the blue dress. I thought I had survived my first night. I thought wrong. At 3:30 a.m., a soft knock echoed against the glass door. I turned to see her, a woman in a faded blue dress, standing just outside the motel. Her hair hung in tangled strands, her skin too pale, like a mannequin left in the sun too long. Her eyes, empty, hollow. She smiled. It was all teeth. I knew the rule. Do not speak to her. She knocked again. Louder. The glass rattled. Still, I didn't move. Then she whispered through the glass. You see them, don't you? My throat tightened. She leaned closer, pressing her hands against the glass. Her fingers were wrong. Too long. the bones visible beneath her thin skin. They see you too. I squeezed my eyes shut, counting in my head. When I opened them, she was gone. But the motel felt different, like something was inside, watching. The blood-stained room. The next night, Earl was waiting for me. "You saw her, didn't you?" he asked, lighting another cigarette. I hesitated. I think so." He shook his head. "You think so, or you know so?" I swallowed. "I know so." He sighed. "Then you got two choices. You quit now, or you learn to survive." I should have quit. I should have run. But I needed the money. That night, a guest checked into room 9. A normal-looking man, except for his eyes, too dark, too empty. He didn't speak much, just nodded when I handed him the key. At 4 a.m., his screams tore through the motel. I rushed down the hallway, my heart slamming against my ribs. The door to room 9 was open. Blood smeared the walls, the floor. But the man was gone. All that remained was a single message, scratched into the wood of the door. "Room 6 is hungry." I ran back to the front desk, locked the door behind me. I wasn't alone. From the hallway, I heard slow, deliberate footsteps, something dragging along the floor. Then a whisper. "You broke the rules." The lights flickered, and then everything went dark. This was only the beginning. The motel had secrets, ones I wasn't meant to uncover. But I had made a mistake. I had acknowledged them, and now they wouldn't let me leave. The motel doesn't forget. I woke up on the floor of the motel lobby. My head pounded, my mouth tasted like copper, and my hand was shaking. The last thing I remembered was the message scratched into the door. "Room 6 is hungry." Then the lights had gone out. Now, everything looked normal, but something was wrong. The lobby clock read 4:07 a.m. The motel was silent. Not a single sound outside. No wind. No cars on the distant highway. Even the buzzing neon vacancy sign had gone dark. I pushed myself up, my knees weak. My fingers trembled as I reached for the landline on the desk. I needed to call someone. Earl, the police, anyone. The moment my hand touched the receiver, the phone rang. I froze. The screen had no caller ID. The motel didn't have voicemail. The phone barely worked. I hesitated for too long. The ringing stopped. Then, a voice whispered from the receiver. "You broke the rules." I yanked my hand away. My breath caught in my throat. The silence returned. Then, I heard the first knock. Soft, deliberate, coming from the glass entrance door. I turned slowly, already knowing who I'd see. The woman in the blue dress. Only this time, she wasn't smiling. She raised a single hand and pointed at me. Then, the phone rang again. The vanishing guest. I didn't answer it. I wasn't that stupid. Instead, I grabbed my keys and rushed to the employee break room, slamming the door behind me. I needed to find Earl. I needed answers. But when I reached for my phone, the screen was blank. No signal. No battery warning. Just a dead, black screen. That's when I heard footsteps outside. Slow, dragging, coming down the hallway from the guest rooms. My breath hitched. No one else was supposed to be awake. The motel was small, 12 rooms, 1 floor, thin walls. I would have heard someone walking before now. I reached for the break room's emergency flashlight and flicked it on. A shadow moved under the door. I held my breath, watching as it stopped just outside. Then a voice. Low, guttural. "Wrong. Help me." The doorknob twisted. I shoved the small metal fridge in front of the door and backed against the wall. The voice came again, closer. "Please, I don't want to go back." A single eye peered through the crack in the doorframe. Bloodshot, unblinking. Then it was gone. I waited for what felt like hours before pushing the fridge aside and stepping out into the hallway. Silence. Room 9's door was open again. But this time, The message carved into the wood had changed. You can't save them. A warning from Earl. By the time morning came, I had convinced myself it had been some kind of hallucination, sleep deprivation, stress. Earl showed up right on time at 7 a.m., whistling like nothing was wrong. "You look like hell," he muttered, pouring himself a cup of burnt coffee. I slammed the employee handbook onto the counter. "What the hell is going on here, Earl?" He sighed. "Took you longer than most to ask." I clenched my jaw. "A guest vanished last night. The woman in the blue dress came back. The rules don't make sense, and—" Earl held up a hand. "First thing you need to understand, kid, this motel ain't normal." I laughed bitterly. "No shit." Earl leaned forward. "I mean it. It ain't haunted. It ain't cursed. It's worse." I swallowed. "What is it, then?" Earl exhaled smoke through his nose. "This place is hungry." A cold chill ran through me. Earl nodded toward the rooms. "It picks people. Chews them up. Some are already gone before they check in. Some disappear slow." He flicked his cigarette into an old coffee mug. "And some of them, well, they don't go quietly." I thought of the man in room 9, of the whisper through the phone. I don't. I swallowed hard. I don't want to be next. Earl looked at me for a long time before speaking. Then follow the rules. The night that shouldn't have happened. My next shift started at 10 p.m. I wasn't ready. I sat at the front desk, gripping the employee handbook like it was a Bible. The air smelled wrong, stale, heavy, like the motel was breathing. At 11:45 p.m., a man walked in. Tall, too thin, wearing a business suit that didn't quite fit right. He didn't blink as he handed me a crisp $100 bill. "Room 6, he said. I swallowed hard. "Rule 2, do not acknowledge him." I stared at my computer screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. "Room 6, he repeated. I clenched my jaw and said nothing. The man stood there for an unnatural amount of time. Then, slowly, he turned and walked back outside. I exhaled. Then, at 12:01 a.m., something changed. The motel doors locked themselves. The neon vacancy sign flickered and shut off. The front desk phone rang. I stared at it, my stomach twisting. It rang and rang and rang. Then it stopped. A single knock came from the door behind me. The break room. I turned slowly. The knocking continued, harder this time. I took a step back. My legs felt weak. Then, a voice whispered from the other side. "You were supposed to let him in." The break room door handle twisted. The lights flickered. And then, from the motel hallway, I heard something worse. Footsteps. Hundreds of them. Coming from every room at once. The motel didn't forget. It didn't forgive. I had broken the rules again. And now, it was going to show me why. The motel opens its doors. The footsteps didn't stop. They grew louder, echoing from every room in the motel. Soft, shuffling steps. Heavy, dragging ones. Some moved fast, too fast, skittering along the walls and ceiling. Others stomped slowly, deliberately, as if savoring every moment. I backed up against the front desk, gripping the edge until my knuckles turned white. The motel was waking up. The break room door rattled. The whisper came again. "You were supposed to let him in." I turned toward the hallway. The air felt thick, pressing down on me like a weight. The dim ceiling lights flickered, casting shifting shadows that didn't move like they should. A door creaked open. Then another. A figure stepped out from room 7. Tall. Wrong. Limbs slightly too long. Neck tilted at an unnatural angle. Its eyes locked onto mine, empty and bottomless. I couldn't breathe. The thing opened its mouth. And then, the motel lights went out. The rule breaker. Darkness swallowed everything. I fumbled for the flashlight I kept behind the desk, but my fingers were numb, clumsy. Footsteps rushed toward me. Not just one pair. Dozens. A whisper brushed against my ear. You shouldn't be here. I turned and ran. I didn't know where I was going, just that I needed to get away. The hallway stretched before me, impossibly long, the doors shifting and twisting in my vision. The air hummed with something ancient, something wrong. The walls pulsed as if they were breathing. I reached room 9 and yanked the door open, slamming it shut behind me. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. Silence. Then a scratching sound. I turned, shining my flashlight at the far wall. The scratches were fresh, deep gouges in the plaster. A message. Don't run. It likes that. The whisper came again, right outside the door. You broke the rules. Something slammed against the door. I jumped back. The handle twisted violently, rattling as whatever was outside tried to get in. I pressed myself against the opposite wall, clutching the flashlight like it could actually protect me. The pounding stopped. A long silence. Then a knock. Soft. Rhythmic. 1, 2, 3. I squeezed my eyes shut. Then a voice. Not the whisper. Something new. Let me in. It was the man from earlier. The one who had asked for room 6. The one I didn't acknowledge. His voice was calm. Too calm. Let me in, he said again. I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. Then, slowly, the door handle unlocked. Not by him. By the motel. What's in room 6? The door creaked open an inch. I held my breath, waiting for the thing outside to rush in. It didn't. The man, if he was even still a man, stood in the doorway. His face was blank, his eyes dark pools. His suit was pristine, untouched by dust or time. He stepped inside. My body refused to move. He stared at me for an agonizing moment. Then, in a slow, deliberate motion, he raised one hand and pointed toward the hallway. My stomach twisted. I knew where he was pointing. Room 6. I shook my head. No. The man tilted his head. It's waiting. The walls groaned. The air hummed with something unnatural. The motel wanted me to go there. And I knew, if I refused, it would make me. The man in the suit stepped back into the hallway. Then, the impossible happened. He glitched. For a fraction of a second, his entire form distorted, flickering like a corrupted video file, limbs snapping into the wrong angles before resetting. Then he was gone, vanished. The hallway was empty, but room SIX's door was open, and something inside breathed. Crossing the threshold, I didn't want to go in. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to turn around, to run, to quit this job and never look back. But the motel didn't give choices. The walls pressed inward, the ceiling sagging as if the whole building was shifting around me. The air smelled like rot. I stepped forward. The closer I got to room 6, the more wrong everything felt. The floorboards buzzed under my feet, vibrating like they were full of insects. The walls whispered, the sound just beneath the threshold of understanding. I reached the doorway. Darkness yawned inside, deeper than it should have been. My flashlight barely cut through it. I swallowed hard. Then I stepped inside. The hungry room. The second my foot crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind me. The air was suffocating. Thick. Heavy. I lifted my flashlight, and I saw them. The walls weren't walls. They were faces. Mouths stretched in silent screams. Eyes frozen in horror. Their skin was fused together, writhing like something alive. I choked back a scream. Then, the faces turned to look at me. All at once, a whisper slithered through the room, coming from everywhere and nowhere. You shouldn't be here. I stumbled back, my breath coming in sharp gasps. The faces grinned. Then they spoke, not with words, with thoughts. Flashes of memories, sensations, pain flooded my mind. I saw people checking into the motel, smiling, laughing. Then, I saw them being taken, absorbed into the walls, eaten. I pressed my hands over my ears, squeezing my eyes shut. No, this isn't real. The voices laughed. Then, in unison, they whisper my name. I bolted for the door. It didn't open. The walls shifted, faces pushing out toward me, grinning wider, eyes bulging. I pounded on the door. "Let me out." A single voice answered. "Not yet." And then I felt it. Something behind me. Breathing. I turned and saw what the motel was feeding. I had made a mistake. I wasn't supposed to enter room 6. And now I knew why. But the motel wasn't done with me yet. Not even close. What the motel is feeding. I turned. The thing in room 6 wasn't human. It sat in the far corner of the room, just beyond the reach of my flashlight. I could see its outline. Wrong angles, elongated limbs, skin stretched too tight over something that wasn't a body. And it was breathing. Shallow, slow breaths that rattled like a broken machine. The walls behind it twisted, shifting faces writhing in silent agony. The air was suffocating. Then it spoke. Not out loud. Inside my head. "You don't belong here." I pressed myself against the door, my heartbeat a frantic drum against my ribs. My fingers scrambled at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The thing in the corner moved. Not like something living. It glitched, like reality itself was struggling to contain it. One moment, it was curled in the corner. The next, it was closer. My breath hitched. I lifted the flashlight, the beam trembling. Its face, if you could call it that, was featureless. A stretched, blank canvas of pale, pulsing skin. But then, as the light touched it, it made a face. A copy. My face. Mouth splitting open, mirroring my terror. And then it screamed. The voices in the walls. The sound wasn't human. It wasn't animal. It was something else entirely. Something that didn't belong in this world. The walls screamed with it. The faces twisted, howling in agony as the room pulsed, throbbing like a living wound. The floor quaked, cracks splitting through the wood. I covered my ears, but the sound was inside my skull. The thing lunged. I dove to the side, barely avoiding its grasp. My flashlight flew from my hand, rolling across the floor. The room shifted, the dimensions warping. I wasn't in the motel anymore. Or maybe the motel had never really been what I thought it was. The walls melted, revealing something beneath them. Something endless and black, filled with moving things. Shapes with too many arms, too many eyes, crawling over one another, whispering in languages I didn't understand but somehow knew. The motel wasn't feeding them. It was feeding on them. And now it wanted me too. A deal in the dark. A whisper slithered through the air. "Make it stop." I spun around. The thing, the copy of me, was crouched by the flashlight, its stretched, unnatural mouth mimicking my breathing. But now, there was something different. Fear. It wasn't attacking. It was pleading. The walls convulsed, the whispering growing louder, the blackness behind them pushing forward, reaching for both of us. The thing pointed toward the door. "Let me out." I shook my head, my mind reeling. No, I don't. The shadows rushed forward. I didn't have a choice. I ran, breaking the rules. The door didn't fight me this time. It swung open on its own. I stumbled into the hallway, my vision swimming. The air was thinner out here, but wrong in a different way. The motel was different. The walls had shifted. The hallway stretched endlessly in both directions, doors multiplying like a labyrinth. And worse, the rules were gone. The framed page that had hung behind the front desk since my first shift was missing. Or rather, it had changed. A new set of rules had replaced it, and the first one was written in red. Rule number 1, you let it out. Now you have to hide. The hunt begins. I backed away from the desk, my breath coming in short gasps. I let it out. The thing in room 6. And now it was loose. The motel groaned around me, adjusting to its new reality. A single light flickered above room 12. Then, the hallway plunged into darkness. I turned toward the entrance doors, my fingers fumbling at the locks. They wouldn't open. Of course they wouldn't. A sound ripped through the silence. A low, wet clicking from a far end of the hallway. Something was crawling toward me. I didn't wait to see what it was. I ran. Nowhere left to run. The hallway twisted and shifted beneath my feet, stretching impossibly long. The motel was toying with me. I yanked open the first door I reached, room 3, and threw myself inside. The second I crossed the threshold, the sound stopped. I clamped a hand over my mouth, my chest rising and falling in shallow gasps. The room was normal, too normal. Perfectly made bed, pristine carpet, a single painting on the wall, a landscape with no sky. I turned the lock, stepping back. Then, something breathed behind me. My stomach dropped. Slowly I turned. The closet door was open an inch, and inside, someone was watching me. I had broken the rules. I had let something out, and now, something else was waiting for me. The motel's last secret. The closet door stood open an inch, and something was inside. I couldn't see it, only its eyes, gleaming like wet marble in the dark. The room hummed, a low vibration pressing against my skull. The thing in the closet knew my name. I didn't hear it with my ears. I felt it in my bones. A whisper slithering through my thoughts. You let out. I took a step back. My foot landed on the carpet, but it felt wrong. Too soft, too deep, like something underneath was shifting, pressing against the soles of my shoes. The closet door creaked. The eyes didn't blink. Then, the thing inside the closet moved. A single, pale hand emerged. Long fingers. Too many joints. The skin stretched tight over bone, nails sharp and curved. I turned to run, but the door was gone. The room that wasn't a room. My breath hitched in my throat. The room had changed around me. The bed was gone. The wall stretched upward, impossibly high. The only thing left was the closet, and the thing inside it. It stepped out. I didn't see its full shape, just glimpses. A shadow where there should have been a body. A flicker of movement that didn't belong to anything human. But the worst part, it still had my face. Distorted, stretched, grinning in a way that hurt to look at. The whisper came again. Run. I didn't need to be told twice. The hunt ends. I sprinted into the darkness. There was no door, no walls, just endless black. My footsteps barely made a sound. Behind me, the thing laughed. It was following, but I could feel something else too. Something deeper, beneath my feet, beneath this place. The motel was watching, and it was hungry. I wasn't just running from a thing in the closet. I was running from the motel itself. The heart of the motel. I don't know how long I ran. Time didn't work right here. But eventually, I saw something. A door. Not like the others. It was old, rotting wood, covered in deep gouges, like something had been clawing at it from both sides. A single word was carved into it. Exit. I grabbed the handle and pulled. Nothing. I yanked harder. The whisper slithered through my mind again. You don't get to leave. The thing behind me wasn't laughing anymore. I turned, my breath ragged. It was right there, close enough that I could see the way its skin shifted, faces pressing outward from beneath it. Trapped souls. People who had broken the rules before me. And soon, I'd be one of them. Unless I did something insane. A trade. I didn't have much time. The motel had taken people before, but I had let something out, and I had a feeling it wanted that more than it wanted me. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. Then I whispered, "Take it back." The whisper stopped. The thing froze. The air shifted, and then the motel moved. The darkness collapsed. The walls reappeared, folding in like a massive, breathing organism. The endless black vanished, and the thing that had crawled out of room 6, it screamed, not in anger, in fear. It fought, clawing at the walls as they closed around it. But the motel had made up its mind. It took back what I had set loose. The door in front of me unlocked. The last rule. I didn't look back. I threw the door open and stepped through. For a moment, I thought I'd see the parking lot, the town, the stars. But no, I stepped directly into the front desk. Like I'd never left. Like none of it had happened. Except, the rules had changed again. A new page hung behind the desk. Only one rule was written this time. Don't break the rules. I turned, heart pounding. The motel was silent. Nothing moved. The hallway was empty. The doors were all closed. Even room 6. The nightmare was over. Or at least, until the next guest checked in. The end.